Hello and welcome to So What You're Saying Is. I'm Peter Whittle. Now, my guest today is one of Britain's best-known commentators and broadcasters. Julia Hartley-Brewer started as a reporter on the East London Advertiser in Bethnal Green, then went on to write about politics for The Standard, for the Sunday Express and for The Guardian. She's now host of The Breakfast Show on Talk Radio. She's very well known to us from her appearances on Question Time and throughout the media. And she also features on those lists they regularly produce of the most influential right-wing people in Britain. Thank you very much for coming. That's a bit of a starter, isn't it?
Absolutely. I didn't know I'd been so busy.
When you appear on, say, like a list of like most prominent right-wing, what actually to you is right-wing?
Well, this is the funny thing. See, I don't think of myself as right-wing. I always say I'm not right-wing, I'm just right. A lot of my views, actually, people on the right would say, pinko lefty, rather like the NHS and things like that. I came from a Labour background. My parents were involved in the Callaghan government, God rest their souls, and still alive, and an NHS GP mother. So my background was very much on the left, very much supported parties like the SDP in my teens and the like. I voted Lib Dem, I voted Labour, I voted Conservative, I voted UKIP, European elections in the past. So I consider myself to be a floating voter. So, I think people should be locked up if they commit crimes. I think people need benefits if they're disabled. I think my views are actually remarkably mainstream. But the media, because the media class, their views aren't mainstream, they're actually much to the left. They think everybody who thinks, for instance, a prison sentence might be appropriate for someone who's burgled someone's house, they think you're right-wing. Or, God forbid, having a limit on the number of people who can walk into the country and make their homes here. I don't think these are remotely right-wing issues or left-wing issues. I think these are just sensible political views.
Well, you mentioned that. I mean, you're from Birmingham, aren't you?
I was born in Birmingham, yes.
I mean, were you always politically interested?
Always, yeah. So parents always involved in politics. Right. Yeah, I went to school in 1979 at the age of 11 with a Win with Jim T-shirt, Jim Callahan T-shirt. So I've been on the losing side many times. Always politically interested. Thought for quite a long time I would go into politics, and then realised actually it was going to be a better life as a journalist commenting on it. I've also got a 12-year-old daughter now who's still insistent I'm not allowed to go into politics until she's left home.
But what, this you just put forward what you believe. The fact is, being called right-wing now
is an insult.
Is a sort of insult. Even your average Tory, I think, would consider it an insult now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
If you go back to, say, like 1979, when you went to school or throughout the 80s, was it the case then, do you think, or has this got worse in your lifetime?
I think there's always been a little bit from the left and the right where the left, the right may be competent and get the job done, but the left are good people and they mean well. Yeah. And there's always been this thing, but it's got worse and worse and worse now that we're the good people on the left, you're the baddies. Yeah. That's this whole trope about, never kissed a Tory and things like that, which I think is really, really weird. And you just don't see the same level of vitriol from the mainstream right. They'll immediately point to, say, Tommy Robinson and talk about the far right. These people aren't in the mainstream political arena. Yeah. But in terms of attitudes towards people and debating people on the basis of, look, we both want the country to be a good place. We want people to have productive, happy lives and make choices for themselves and children to get good education, people to get good health, get all these, the trains to run. Now, it's no longer a debate about what's the best way of doing this? Yeah. How would we best go about getting the outcome we want? Now, Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems will all come with different perspectives on that. But the argument between left and right now is we're good people on the left. Yeah. We want the right things. Whatever you want, even if it works, you wanted it for the wrong reasons. Yeah. And this idea that your motivations are somehow evil if you're considered to be right-wing is a very new and I think very disturbing development.
You see, you peppered your sentences there with, we want this to work well with the country and we all want this. But that sort of presupposes you feel that there's a country and that you're part of it. Isn't this the crucial thing?
Yeah.
I mean, you would call yourself a somewhere, would you, as opposed to an anywhere? You know this David Goodhart thing?
Oh, this whole citizen of the world
yes.
nonsense. I genuinely find that utterly bizarre.
Yeah.
It is totally normal and natural and desirable that we should care more about what happens to our immediate families and then our immediate neighbours, our colleagues, our friends, people we know through school or something, and workplace. And you widen this out to people from your local area. Oh, did you hear about that terrible crime? It's a lady down my street that it happened to. Oh, that man, do you know what happened to him? He's from my hometown. We feel this affinity with people because we have a connection to them. And the idea that I shouldn't care more about what happens to people who live in my own country more than people who live in another country, I find quite bizarre. So much about what is considered to be right-wing now is patriotism, a belief in the nation state, a belief that we have an affinity with each other, a culture, not just a past but a future with each other. And this is somehow dirty and nasty and evil and wrong. And I think the vast majority of people in this country look at those debates and just think, frankly, the political and media class have gone stark staring mad.
But this political and media class,
of which I am a fully paid up member,
which you move in, and I do too, frankly, it seems to me that they don't even understand what you're talking about.
No.
When you talk about these things, it's not just they disagree, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw this, did we not, with the Brexit campaign or the Remain campaign.
Yeah.
It was all economics, was it not?
Yes, because everyone's going to vote only on economics, and they never understood that people didn't vote to be poorer. Well, they didn't believe Project Fear. But also, they did, in that vote, in that choice, as people often do in their voting, and as they do in their daily lives, they made choices about what matters to them. And actually, living in a local community where you can get your kid into the local school and where you're sitting in the doctor's surgery and some people might actually speak English. No one does in my local surgery in London, where you actually know people on the street who've lived there for years. That this sense of community is actually more important to people than earning an extra £1,000 a year. And these are people who earning an extra £1,000 a year will make a big difference to them. They're not earning that, for 10 minutes work like Tony Blair does for a speech. And it's about, I suppose it is about what you value, and I suppose it's about what you believe in, and it's got very little to do with money, and which is why that Remain argument on money was never going to work, and it won't work if there's a second referendum.
But the thing is that they haven't changed their tune, have they?
No.
Wouldn't you say that over the past 2 years, all the arguments seem to have been entirely economic, and they still are?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all. But it's almost like, is money the only thing that motivates these people who, of course, are better than us because they voted to Remain? Let's think. I had my very first falling out almost 3 years after the referendum. I had my first falling out with a friend over Brexit the other day, and it was really quite upsetting. And she said, "Oh no, we'll just agree never to speak about it." And I said, "How can we be friends if we can't have a debate about this?" I said, I completely respect you for voting Remain, and I'd like you to respect me for voting Leave, but you fundamentally think that I'm neither as clever nor as nice as you thought I was because I voted Leave. There must be something slightly wrong with me to have voted Leave. Well, there's something slightly wrong with 17.4 million of us, and I, for one, am just fed up of being told we're ignorant, we're stupid, we didn't know what we were voting for, we were conned, we were lied to, and we're xenophobic and racist and little
uneducated.
England. Uneducated. Yeah, I must remember to tell that to my tutor at Oxford.
Yes, well, this is the point.
Actually, he probably would think that. But
the interesting thing is as well is that when David Goodhart was talking about anywheres and somewheres, this was a big thing, that if you were educated, you're more likely to be a Remainer, but also an anywhere. But what about those of us who are educated to the gills or what have you? Well, I would consider myself a somewhere. I care about, I feel, for my country, I'm patriotic, and I'm in London, all those sorts of things.
I feel those affinities. Again, I think those affinities, I think somehow the Remainers who feel that way, there'll be plenty of Remainers who don't feel like they're citizens of Europe, but I think they just think there's something rather tacky and nasty about nationalism. For them, like Emily Thornberry, when I see an England flag, that just means someone's racist. They don't understand why we're so excited about World Cups and European Cups, because we're allowed to fly our national flag with pride, and you're not instantly sort of, hello, dodgy. I can't believe there's any other country in the world that the flag for our country of England is, that their flag would be seen as a symbol of negativity or something to be ashamed of. I think that says an awful lot about our country. You fly the Welsh flag in Wales, that's fine. You fly the St Andrews flag in Scotland, oh, that's wonderful. That's all about, patriotism. Yeah. You fly it in England and you're a nasty racist. What does that say about the attitude that has driven that?
Well, there's that famous quote from Orwell, who said that the English intelligentsia are unique in the world in having a distaste for their own nationality.
Yes.
Anything to do with English things, English taste, or what have you.
Well, it's all wrapped up with this sort of colonial guilt, white guilt. I mean, Jon Snow on Channel 4 the other day, talking about the end of the Leave Means Leave rally. I've never seen so many white people in one place. Yeah. What, didn't you cover the Remain rally last week? Which was, white. But you know what?
I think you tweeted the Hayes Festival.
He was at the Hayes Literary Festival. I said he must have been really shocked at the Hayes. and the Glastonbury Festival where he'd attended a couple of years ago when he was shouting, F the Tories. Well, look at the pictures of that crowd. Yeah. But the idea that in some way this is worth A, pointing out, and B, with the nudge of, isn't this ghastly? They're all white. 90% of the country is white. It's irrelevant. Actually, I was at the Leave Means Leave rally. There were plenty of people of colour in the audience. Yeah. But even if there weren't, it's irrelevant because this is the thing. I'm not judging whether a cause is good or bad by the colour of the people, the skin of the people talking about it.
Actually, you were talking about the rally last week, which was the Brexit rally in Parliament Square. You spoke at that, didn't you?
Terrifying. Never done a speech at a political rally before.
I mean, you said you didn't want to be active in politics, but I mean, what did that feel like?
Well, again, I was very careful to ascertain that it was a cross-party issue. And again, so I mean, I have a radio show, national radio. We have Ofcom rules. I can't be seen to be affiliated with any political party, and I'm not. I genuinely am a floating voter. But I felt it was just something I felt it was so important, and it transcends politics. This isn't about, I think one party is better than another party. This is about, I think democracy is better than not having democracy. And I'm so angry and so horrified by what our MPs are doing and unelected lords right now are doing, and the arrogance with which they are telling the country, well, we made a terrible mistake. We thought we could trust you to do what we told you to do in the referendum, and you didn't, you silly, stupid people. So we're going to have to take it back from you and make things better because you're not trusted. And I think that the damage that's going to be done to our country for decades as a result of that is going to be huge. I don't think they understand what they have done. Yeah.
What do you think? How do you see it working out in that way? Because this is, to me, this is fundamental. My attitude now to my country, or should I say its institutions, has fundamentally changed. I found
my trust in the democratic principles of this country has fundamentally changed. I worked in Commons for years. We've both been around lots of politicians. I'm actually someone who will defend politicians. I think they do a tough job. It's not that well paid compared to lots of other jobs they could get. It's long hours. It's a difficult job. It never occurred to me during 2016, it never occurred to me for 1 minute that they wouldn't accept the outcome of the referendum. Right. This is the equivalent of, say, Jeremy Corbyn getting in at the next general election. Perfectly possible, could happen. And all the MPs basically say, no, just because he's got a majority, no, we're not going to let him move into number 10. We're just not going to let it happen. We're going to have to get everyone to vote again. Now, that's inconceivable. Yeah. Well, is it now? Yeah. Is it? They're willing to overturn a referendum result. We've had Yvette Cooper sponsoring a bill going through the House of Commons in a day, and now through the Lords, saying, basically trying to stop Brexit, openly, blatantly stopping Brexit, extending, stopping a no-deal Brexit. She stood at the election, the last election, not only on a manifesto commitment from Labour, which said they would deliver Brexit, slightly different version, but nevertheless a recognisable Brexit. And put out her own election leaflet saying, in exact words, I will not block Brexit. Yes. And then she brings in a bill. And instead of her being castigated in the media and being treated as the pariah she should be for this, and in every other way I've actually been very admiring of her as a politician, she's treated as sort of the saviour. Like, oh, well, thank goodness Yvette Cooper's doing this. And again, I think that the media class are in on it, the establishment are in on it, the civil service, the politicians, they're all in on it. And it's basically a saving the British people from themselves attitude.
Well, you reported on politics for a long time, didn't you? You were a political correspondent.
I was a political editor for 10 years,
I mean, you don't miss that part of reporting? I mean, if you were reporting this is what I'm saying, it would be tough, wouldn't it? Isn't it better to be a commentator?
I much prefer being a commentator. Yeah, I moved into that deliberately, actually. But again, there are an awful lot of people on the TV now, BBC, Sky and others, who I've got a pretty good idea how they voted when it came to the referendum. I mean, some of them I know how they voted because they've told me, and I'm amazed at how many senior people in the media were like, I can't believe you voted for Brexit. You're insane. Why would you do that? That is the general view of people working in the media. And I think the reporting, the coverage of this issue has been so unbelievably biased. And I think people are waking up to it. And I think the BBC are not going to come out of this well.
Do you think, I mean, when people call into your show...
Mm-hmm. We don't do many phone-ins on the breakfast show. It's far less of a phone-in, but we have lots and lots of guests.
Do you think, though, that from the feedback you get from the public, that the penny has dropped about the media? I mean, my feeling is that it was in the past, it was Tory MPs usually saying the Today programme doesn't give us as much time as Labour MPs. Yeah. But it's not quite, it's much bigger than that now, isn't it? It's much bigger.
But I find it amazing there are still so many people who think, for instance, the BBC is biased against Remain. I mean, I don't know what stations they've been listening to. Look, I love the BBC. I watch these and listen to their output. But I tell you what it is, they don't hear it themselves. They don't know it. They live in such a bubble. I know this because I've sat there in production meetings and they don't know anybody who voted Leave. They think they don't know anyone who voted Leave. You could see their faces when the referendum result was announced. The BBC they were sitting there in shock. Who were all these ghastly people? Where wasn't anyone they met? It must be a fix. They live in a complete bubble of remote. I mean, I live in Ramona Central in North London. They live in a complete bubble. They don't know anybody who would admit to them they voted Leave. They will know people. They just are too afraid to say it because they don't want to be accused of being a racist or stupid. But I don't even think, when they say we're not biased, they genuinely believe they're not. They have no idea that their perspective is constantly going from, they treat Eurosceptics like they're idiots. Everything the EU says, anything Donald Tusk or Verhofstadt or Jean-Claude Juncker says is treated as the word of God, as engraved on a tablet and brought down from the mountain. And they don't even hear it and see it themselves.
There was actually, again, I think you tweeted it, I certainly did. The Remainers put a big sort of flag on the White Cliffs of Dover or something, and it was replied to by...
Saying with SOS.
Yes, something like that. It's a point. I mean...
Well, no, but I mean, so I tweeted out someone said SOZ, SOZ, we're leaving. I don't know. I don't know how these people can live themselves. Yeah. The utter... The sort of the self-degradation, the self-flagellation. I mean, it's embarrassing. I want to give these people a hug. I'm not even angry at them. It's the fact that they don't think that our country, uniquely in the world, fifth biggest trading nation in the world, the idea that we can't rule ourselves, that we can't possibly survive without Liechtenstein and Belgium having a say in how we run our country. I'm genuinely, that's utterly perplexing to me. And yet these are the same people who say, before 2016, we don't need to leave the EU. It barely has any impact on our lives. And now they're telling us, we can't leave the EU, they're in control of everything. Well, which is it?
The thing is that it used to be that when you had arguments with people who were pro EU back in the old days, essentially their attitude was, well, look, we see there are real problems with it.
We want to reform.
We see there are real problems, democratic deficit, etc., but basically on balance, we want to stay in. It was a kind of, you could argue with it.
It's a perfectly reasonable position.
You could argue, but there are people now who seem to have an emotional attachment to this.
To Jean-Claude Juncker's drinks cabinet. Yeah,
yes,
it's quite. It's like it's like the EU is this god. It's this saviour of our nation, and it's what stands between us and sort of living like cavemen, where we're going to be burning sort of immigrants at the stake and living like post Holocaust. Well, it's utterly bizarre. I mean, I think this the main reason why Remainers, and it's not Remainers, most people who voted Remain had perfectly good reasons to do so and accept the democratic result. That's why I use the term Remainers. It's very different. But most Remainers, I think, are terrified of a no-deal Brexit more than anything else in the world. Not because it would be a disaster, because they secretly fear that the next day would be exactly the same as the day before. And they would be absolutely terrified that everything they have said and everything that they believe, and they've they've almost taught themselves to believe would turn out to be a lie. And that England and Britain would just go on and do very, very well, and we'd have economic growth and we'd survive, and then we'd get a perfectly good free trade deal with Europe. It's almost like they are terrified that might actually happen, because then their EU god will fall before them.
But also all the other bricks in their pantheon of beliefs would then start to look a bit shaky, wouldn't they? I mean, this is the whole point. It's almost like a religion.
It is.
You are on Question Time a lot.
Yes.
You, in some ways, you come right up against this imbalance, because you're on panels where it's like, like one Remainer or maybe, one Brexiteer, three Remainers, whatever. The audience, which 9 times out of 10, I do not know how they pick them. I've done it myself, I've been on Question Time, what have you. Do you think with the BBC, because look, in a way, Sky is also, to me, has been a revelation in how biased it's been. But with the BBC, what do you see as being like in the 10 years' time, the situation with the BBC? Do you think that, would you be in favour of abolishing the licence fee?
Well, this is it. Again, I mean, I think we should just be honest and just call it a tax, which is what it is. Yeah. I've always been in favour, we should keep the BBC. I think it's done some wonderful work. But now, to be honest with you, now people are getting their subscriptions, whether it's to Sky or Amazon Prime or Netflix or, everyone else who's creating these. I think there's going to be more and more people saying, oh, hold on a minute, I'm not prepared to do this. And certainly younger generations, my brother and sister, in their 30s, they don't watch television from one year to the next. And I think it is becoming more and more something of the older generation, and eventually we're all going to be over 75 and there's going to be no one paying it anyway. I have a funny feeling that it's going to fall by the wayside more because of the pressures of online streaming and Netflix than actually as a result of political action, because I think the BBC is such a strong sort of defender of the establishment. Now, it used to be the Tory establishment. And now it's a strong defender of the sort of liberal elite establishment. They ain't going to let go of that quickly.
In this kind of environment, where there is this, I would say, kind of groupthink, right? You mentioned civil service, the media, particularly in the media we're talking about, and you have your voice. How, when people go for you, when they attack you, what's it like? I mean, how do you handle that? I mean, I don't mean to make you sound infantile or anything.
No,
but how do you?
I've never been very good at playing a victim ever. But
Right.
no, I mean, every now and then, if you do say a Question Time, very high profile, you get thousands of tweets. Every now and then, you thought, wow, the vitriol. If they decide to go for you, and then especially when it's people people perhaps you've worked with in the past, who you get on perfect well, and you see them at a party, and then will gun for you on Twitter to get their likes on Twitter.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit sort of you find yourself taken aback by it, because it is overwhelming, and there are some insults in particular that you have to stand up to. I've had someone tweet, "Julia's racist, pass it on" to their 40,000 followers. I called in lawyers. In fact, I didn't have to call in lawyers. 3 QCs got in touch and said, "Would you like us to bring this case for you?" No, and I said, "You've got until 6 p.m. to withdraw that. I'm not going to have it stand. I'm not racist.
I mean,
you've got no basis on which to call me racist, and I suggest you seek legal advice," which he clearly did. But so the things I won't let stand. But if someone wants to call me vile, the B word, the C word, all versions of the C word, frankly, I just how I react normally is I normally just retweet it to my followers and take the mick out of them about how good the Wi-Fi is in their mum's basement and things like that. But because it is utterly ridiculous. A few people I've said, feel free to come and say that to my face, because I have a funny feeling you won't be that brave. But if people want to disagree and say, "I think you're wrong, this is why you're wrong," that's fine, and then I'll have the debate. But every now and then it can be quite overwhelming. But I genuinely take the view that actually, if you're upsetting them that much, you're probably doing a good job.
Right,
yeah.
Do you sort of come off Twitter ever? Do you ever say to yourself, because you're a pretty prodigious Twitter, aren't you? I'm
a very fast typer.
Oh,
so
I see.
okay, and I can be on air interviewing someone and can still tweet. I'm a big one on the multitasking, working mum and all that. But I genuinely on holiday I do come off Twitter. I certainly won't tweet about politics, but the amount of times I go away and then something major happens. But because politics and the news is my love and my hobby as well, and my family are very into the news as well. We all discuss politics around the dinner table. My poor 12-year-old. But she'll have therapy for years. Therapy for years. She is interested in politics, but she'll sometimes say to me things like, "What do we think?" And I go, "I think this. Your dad thinks that. You go away and read up and find out what you think." I don't ever want her to think how I think. That's not how I'm raising her. So she'll probably I should probably become a sort of climate change activist or something like that, just to upset me. But yeah, no. But I think I do just turn off. You know, if I'm going out for dinner with my husband, I don't sit onto it. Phone goes down. Have a lovely evening. I think you do need to learn to switch off. Absolutely.
Julia, you obviously know how to handle these people who come on, whatever, on Twitter or attack you, say these things. But quite recently there was a very serious situation actually when we had that appalling atrocity in New Zealand. What was astonishing was they almost left no time at all. But the left, I would say, broadly speaking, then started to lay the blame at conservative or perceived conservative commentators and journalists, and your name was up there, wasn't it? That's not funny, is it? I mean,
oh no, that was just well over the line, and I certainly reacted to that and took that on Twitter. This idea that because you've spoken out about immigration, because you have criticised aspects of the religion of Islam, some of the tenets and the clothing, for instance, I'm opposed to the burqa and the niqab, and would certainly have them banned in this country. Along with, I don't want to sit next to someone wearing a balaclava in a restaurant either, because I could consider it subjugation of women. Because I've spoken out about those tenets, somehow I have encouraged a complete lunatic, murderous man on the other side of the world to kill 50 innocent people in a mosque. I mean, that's absurd. I know that's absurd. And yet, it is beyond a joke, because when someone is saying, I spent 3.5 hours on air talking about this horrific murder, mass massacre, and to then have people say, well, I mean, it's some people on the left who wanted to stir it up. And what I find extraordinary is that, just no sense of decency in trying to have the politics of this, but also the fact that they genuinely seem to think that people criticising a religion is the same as someone. I criticise the Catholic religion. I haven't encouraged any Catholics to go and, or people who hate Catholics to go and massacre each other. They're thinking that in the same way is a reasonable response to that would be someone picking up a weapon and murdering 50 innocent men, women, and children in a mosque. These things are so separate. Like the Joe Cox murder, horrific murder by a neo-Nazi lunatic who had been a neo-Nazi lunatic for years. And the idea that because we were having a campaign to become a democratically ruled sovereign nation state through Brexit, that somehow had motivated this man and was the reason why this man took the life of Joe Cox. I think it's obscene that people should make those links.
I think even in that case, it was pretty shameless the way they did it.
And the British people knew it was, and that's one of the reasons why they just went, no. The polling showed they thought that the Remain campaign tried to use the murder to boost their vote, which is a disgusting thing to do.
Do you think, though, that when they kind of make these, when the left go for, like they did in this particular case, or indeed with Joe Cox, isn't it also sort of a way they have of trying to curtail and shut down general debate?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there is a problem, is there not, with free speech increasingly in this country?
A huge problem. And we brought a blasphemy law by default now, but only involving one religion. This constant victimhood idea is ridiculous. The idea that you can't say a single thing about anybody you can criticise anyone who's white. I mean, a white male, if you're white and you're middle class, frankly, you should probably just go and kill yourself now. You're such a bad person. This identitarian politics that we've got, so people are representing, women or gay people or Muslims or black people or these. I was raised in a very liberal left family to treat people as individuals, to judge people by how they act and what they say. That's it. What's in the character of your heart, as Martin Luther King said. Now that the fact that we're supposed to judge everybody based on their skin colour or their religion goes, or gender or gender fluidity or whatever it is, goes against every one of the liberal values I was raised with, and I think it is very, very dangerous. And the idea that people shouldn't be allowed to comment on something because they don't have the correct skin colour, sexuality, gender, or whatever it is, I think is really quite bizarre. And I think the phrase Orwellian comes up an awful lot these days. I don't think it does justice to what is going on right now in terms of the de facto censorship of free speech.
Julia, you mentioned there, being against the burqa a bit earlier. It seems to me that it's one of those issues, a bit like FGM or whatever, that your average Guardianista feminist should be absolutely on the front line about.
Absolutely.
But they seem to be absent, don't they?
Yeah, I find it extraordinary. Well, it's a woman's right to choose what she wears, except that women don't get to choose to wear it in most of the countries. It happens. And the fact that the vast majority of women who are Muslim in this world don't choose to wear the burqa or the niqab, and actually many, huge swathe of the Muslim population around the world don't choose to wear even the headscarf, none of which are remotely required in Islam, certainly not the face coverings. I find it extraordinary that there are women who consider themselves feminists who will justify that, and it is an act. It's a political ideology, the wearing of the burqa. It's got nothing to do with Islam. It's not in the Quran, and it's not in the Hadith in any open, obvious way. There are plenty of Islamic scholars who will say it's got nothing to do with Islam. I don't like Boris Johnson referring to letterboxes and burgers, and I think that's not helpful, although I'll defend his right to use whatever language he chooses. But no, I think that it is, I would absolutely go down the same route that France has, and to say, no, I don't want religious clothing in schools, I don't want it in the workplace, and certainly in Western culture, certainly in British culture, when you're walking down the street, unless there's a really good reason because it's unbelievably cold and you're putting a scarf up over your face to protect yourself from the ice and the snow, you show your face in public. Exactly. And I don't think there's anything controversial about that, and we know the polling shows there's nothing controversial about that.
In fact, we're actually quite behind the curve on
these wonderful liberal EU countries,
yes, exactly,
all of which are bringing in these bans. But they're doing that to protect their own culture, and this is what it comes down to, is this idea that in some way criticising aspects of Islam is anti-Muslim. No, it's not. Actually, a lot of those aspects of Islam are imposed on Muslim. Interestingly, always Muslim women who were treated in pretty much every majority Muslim country in the world as second-class citizens. Yes, exactly. And you see these amazing videos of women in Syria and Iraq, and indeed in Iran, showing their having to take off the burqas they've been forced to wear, taking off their headscarves in Iran, and being arrested for it. And yet over here we're saying it's a proud act of feminism for a woman to choose to cover her face. It's bizarre.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Do you think, this is all part of the kind of identity politics that you just mentioned earlier?
It's I'm separate, I'm other, I'm different.
Exactly. This is, it seems to me, is the dominating theme of our politics now.
Yeah.
Frankly, it seems to me that it cuts society vertically, into all these, it used to be class maybe. It used to be class. What would you say is the way out of that?
I think the way out of it is for people like you, like me, and basically the sane majority to say, no, we're not going to put up with this lunacy of, for instance, saying every child is gender fluid, not all trans, we want people to live a happy life, be your best self, but no, not every child isn't born both male and female. No, they're not. I have to accept the fact that, that actually there are sometimes competing rights between our liberal Western values about freedom of speech, like against blasphemy laws, and against the women's rights and gay rights and the like, mixed race, mixed faith marriages, all these other things, and that they come up against some values in some religions, including Catholicism as well, where they compete. And that's when we need to assert ourselves, and we need to stop being guilty. I think Douglas Murray has written about this brilliantly in his book about The Strange Death of Europe. This bizarrely unique sort of white European, particularly British guilt about our culture, about our history, about our values. And we need to assert that, no, our values are the best in the world. Believing that people are equal regardless of their faith, their gender, their sexuality, their race. What's to be ashamed of there?
Exactly,
and I think we need to shout loudly about these values and be willing to assert them, and rather than feeling, well, he or she feels very strongly, and I'm British, so I'll keep quiet and allow our values to be trampled on, because we do have a really strong history and a really strong tradition, and our values are in the liberal tradition that will be, I think, the future. But I think we need to fight for them, and there's nothing rude or wrong or bad or evil about fighting for the liberal values of freedom of speech and of freedom of religion and freedom to be with who you want to be. These are things worth fighting for, and I don't know why people are so embarrassed and ashamed.
I think Rod Liddell we had on recently. He said he said that the transgender issue was the turning point.
Yeah. I think that's when the British public went, that's it.
Yeah, I'm out. Yeah, come on.
Well, I'm going to see, I've got I say 12-year-old, she's going off shopping, Topshop has, well, we have, trans people can come into our changing rooms, which is absolutely fine if someone's genuinely trans. But if a man just wants to put on a dress and say, I'm trans, and walk in, completely intact, and walk into my daughter's changing room, sorry, I've got a problem with that.
And actually,
actually, most trans people would completely understand that and say, yes, I completely understand why you wouldn't be happy with your 12-year-old daughter in with a grown man with his genitals intact, who is in there for nefarious reasons. This is just common sense stuff, you know. And this isn't about people not wanting trans people to, be free and be treated with equality and respect and have rights. It's just about, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
But the thing is that with these ideologies is that they end up eating themselves in a way.
Yeah.
Because women's sport is in serious trouble now as a result of this, isn't it?
I mean, the array of pictures, I've been campaigning on this now for about a year, but the array of sports where you see these women on the podiums in second and third place, and they're 5 foot tall, and then there's a 6'6" man pretending to be women. They haven't undergone the medical transformation even. Sometimes not even any drugs, certainly not surgery. And they have basically been at a low level in men's sport. They then say, I'm a woman, and they're able to compete. Yes, women's sport is over if this carries on. And the women who've spoken out about it, Martina Navratilova, I mean, one of the strongest feminists and gay rights activists in the world of sport, being accused of being transphobic. I know. For simply saying, is this right? I mean, she basically went, is this a good idea?
Yes, or people like Julie Bindor being no platformed, such like. Have you ever been no platformed?
I'm not aware of it. Maybe I haven't been invited to things which I would have otherwise. But I'd rather enjoy it. I mean, I just turn up anyway. You know me. I always like a bit of trouble. But that's the thing. People shouldn't put up with it. I mean, but Jermaine Greer pointing out,
that's astonishing. She did it beautifully, though. I have to say, I can't quite remember the phrase.
A man who comes off his cock isn't a woman. He's a man without a cock. I mean, again, it's crude, but.
To the point.
But it's true.
Yes, it's true.
And I had a guest on my show the other day who said, I introduced her as a trans woman. Again, always would want to be polite and say, if she prefers to be called she, absolutely. It's a matter of just good manners and respect. And then she said, I'm a woman. I said, but you're not. You're a trans woman. And I'm very happy to call you her and she as a matter of respect out of your choice of your life. But I've had, she's had the surgery. But you're a trans woman. You're not a woman. I mean, you're not. You're not. This is a matter of, I'm not a coffee table and you're not a woman. There are some simple, there are words that have meanings, and I think, again, we've got to fight for words to continue to have the same meaning as they did.
Well, the language is, dictionary. I think the language has been sort of captured in a way.
I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman.
Yes, there you go. On that note, Julia, thank you very, very much for coming in. It's been great to have you, and I hope you come back as well. That's it for So What You're Saying Is this week. Please do join our ever-growing list of subscribers. Thank you to all those who already have. And we'll see you next time. So thanks.